Come on out to Mississauga, it's the greatest place around. Where on a quiet evening you can watch the sun go down. And if you should need a friend, there are plenty to be found. That's why everybody loves that good old Mississauga.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here on Ask a Historian. I'm Matthew Wilkinson, historian with Heritage Mississauga. Please send in your questions to history@heritagemississauga.org as we explore the fascinating stories of Mississauga together on the program. Like, subscribe, and follow us and stay up to date on all the heritage happenings with Heritage Mississauga. As part of this program, we will be exploring memories and moments and milestones from the past 50 years with past and present civic leaders as part of the City of Mississauga's 50th anniversary. On this week's episode, we are excited to be joined by City of Mississauga Ward 8 Councillor Matt Mahoney as we explore his personal perspectives of moments and milestones for the City of Mississauga's 50th anniversary. So we are thrilled to be joined today by Ward 8 Councillor Matt Mahoney with long ties to family service here in the City of Mississauga and also the newly appointed Deputy Mayor. So thank you, Matt, for joining us here.
Certainly is my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I think we're all very excited about our big 50th coming up. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. This is a loaded question, and I realize that, but what are your connections to the City of Mississauga, and how long has the city been home to you?
So, it's funny when people ask me, where were you born? And I say the hospital. So I was born at Mississauga Hospital and have lived here my whole life. So obviously very, very proud of that. My wife and both my kids were also born in Mississauga. So we are Mississaugans through and through.
Multi-generational as well, right? Because you have family roots in here in the community as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm sure we can get into some of this too, but some of the work that both my mom and dad have done and just our family in general across Mississauga is something I'm certainly very proud of.
I know for years I worked with your mom, and we'll segue into that later on. But before you came to be, there was different generations in the same chair that you sit in today. So talk about representing the ward with pride over a long period of time. There's certainly a family link here is incredible.
Yeah, no, it is incredible, and again, something very proud of. My dad was elected in 1978. As the councillor for Ward 8, which I do have his plaque behind me actually in my office from when he was elected. And interestingly enough, he was elected the same year as Hazel was elected mayor of the City of Mississauga. So certainly have a lot of fond memories. It was a long, long time ago, but fond memories of that. And I've told the story before about the front page of the Mississauga News back then, where my older brother, was the one who gave Hazel flowers on inauguration day. He was famous at school for about 3 days for giving the flowers to Hazel. So always fond memories, and election campaigns and everything else were certainly a lot of fun when we were kids.
Well, that's incredible. Can you talk about having yourself been born here and grown up here? I mean, you must have a treasure trove of memories from living in Mississauga, but kind of what sticks out in your mind as personal highlights of growing up in the city, about the city itself, things that jump out of your mind that someone says, tell me about living in Mississauga.
Yeah, I mean, seeing the changes in Mississauga is something that I love to tell people about. When people will say to me, well, I've lived here for 20 years, and I say, well, you don't even know how long I've lived here. But I remember Mississauga, the old city hall, actually, when my dad was first elected. It was still down in the downtown or the Square One area, but the apple orchards and land that was here when I was a kid. So I grew up in Erin Mills, old Erin Mills as I call it. My parents bought a new build. And I can remember my brothers and I walking across Winston Churchill at the time, which was almost like a 2-lane dirt road. It was very, very small. And on the other side of Winston Churchill, on the west side, it was all marshland and apple orchards. And interestingly enough, that's where my house is now. So, I mean, I can remember, back in the day when none of this was here, whether it was down at Square One or out in the west end of Erin Mills, which is where I grew up. But I've certainly watched the city change significantly, over the years, and really right before my eyes. So it's quite amazing. And then to see the future who would have thought in, the late 70s that we'd have LRTs coming and the density of all of these things happening. So I remember Mississauga, as we'll call it, a sleepy suburb, as it was always considered a sleepy suburb of Toronto. We are no longer. But I certainly do have lots of fond memories of just watching the city grow. I do remember, believe it or not, that when there was not a 403. Again, very vague memories, faint memories of that. But when the 403 was being built, I remember my brothers and I and friends just going down to explore what this new highway was going to look like and what was happening there. So I've seen the city evolve, and I'm going to continue to see it evolve. But it's an amazing city with a lot of fond memories for me and my family.
Well, you've gone from the growing up with the change and seeing it firsthand to now having hand in steering it. So that's going to be a fascinating evolution for yourself, as well as seeing the city grow and now being part of the growth. It's
yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's the growth is definitely coming and going to continue. But I went to two different grade schools, but one used to be called Pierre Laporte. Now it's Margaret of Scotland. So they invited me a couple of weeks ago to their 50th anniversary. And I remember telling my mom, she's like, "Oh, what do you got going on this week?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to Pierre Laporte / Margaret of Scotland's 50th." And she says, "I can't believe it's 50, So I mean, just we remember as kind of kids that being, a brand new school where we went. So just to think that it's 50 and the city's 50 and it really is amazing. And the next 50 years is going to be exciting too.
Well, we'll get into that a little bit further on. But I grew up in the Arundel area, but right next door to Erin Mills, and one of the things that sticks out of my mind, I don't know if it's yours, but the beginnings, or I guess the creation of the Erin Mills Town Center, and how it was in the middle. It felt like in the middle of nowhere, and now to see that area today is just astounding.
So obviously Erin Mills Town Center, I have very, very clear memories of that, because my mom, prior to her being on council, actually opened a store in there called Tea Masters.
I did not know that. Okay.
And so it was a coffee and a tea shop that she opened up with my aunt. And this was when Erin Mills Town Center was brand new, and there was no housing around it. And you often wonder, maybe they should have built the housing before they built the mall, but they built the mall and then they came. So I have very good memories of Erin Mills Town Center from the day it was open to that little putting green. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that.
Little mini golf game. Again, had friends and my brothers and I would sneak away from Tea Masters when we go see my mom and go do a little bit of mini putt in that square. So great memories of Erin Mills Town Center.
Maybe it's that reverse Field of Dreams, where it's if you build it, they will come.
That's right. Right.
So just, I mean, we look at the change, and I think that's one of the things that carries over through this theme of Mississauga's evolution, is the sheer evolution of the city, and how it has grown. And what are, and maybe we've already touched on this a bit, but what are some of the changes that are most significant to you that you've seen or you've witnessed that have impacted the city itself, like beyond the ward, but those big picture changes that have helped evolve the evolution of Mississauga? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And I think we're still evolving. So, I mean, I did think that it took us some time to actually find our true identity, so to speak, here. But being next to the biggest city in Canada, is certainly put some of the pressures on. But if I talk about, 5 and 10, so Dundas and here Ontario and those areas, and Cooksville, where my wife grew up, and seeing some of the changes, but seeing some of the changes that are coming now with reimagining Cooksville and revisioning Cooksville. But if I look out my front window office, and my mom would tell you that there was a time when she was first elected that you could see the lake from this window, and because the buildings weren't there. So I think it's it is the evolution or the density that's coming, but it's also our multiculturalism, which is something that I'm very proud of. On how we have become a welcoming place for people from all over the world to come and live together in peace, and to grow our city and to grow our economy. And I think that's something that, again, I do tell people, very proud of Mississauga and the multiculturalism, and probably I would argue one of the most multicultural in Canada, if not North America, and a shining example to the world on how we can come together and all live together, regardless of which parts of the world you came from. So I think I've seen that evolution over the years happening as the city grows and as immigration's grown, and obviously the services and community services and again the density coming. But I think it's all evolved from our immigration and multiculturalism, which again has put a bit of more of an identity on us as a city to. And again, for me, something to be very proud of on how we can all come together from all walks of life and across the globe and live peacefully and happily together in this wonderful city called Mississauga.
That's a great sales pitch. I know that there's a long-standing family involvement here in the city of Mississauga, but for yourself specifically, I'm sure that there's background to service before you even approach becoming a councillor and running in an election. But what are some of the groups, the volunteer groups, the organizations that you've been involved in yourself that you have had a hand in that? Creating that identity for Mississauga and playing an important role in the evolution of our city.
I know that there was a lot of groups back in the day when my dad was first elected. Things like Temple, as an example, which was an organization like a ratepayers group. For me personally, as a kid, I was very involved in sports and played sports locally. So through Air Mills baseball, we used to be the Air Mills Eagles back in the day, and I can remember. And I don't know if you have any history on this one, but we used to have a festival called the Strawberry Festival, which would run through Erin Mills, and the landing ground was at South Common, the baseball diamonds, and where the old Loyola High School was. So I remember, the parades that would go through down Council Ring and down Glen Erin, and you'd work your way all the way down, and you'd have a big festival. The Strawberry Festival was something that was very important to me. But for myself personally, the Air Mills baseball and then Arundel hockey as well, which I played for. My son also played there. But I got back involved in coaching in later life to be able to kind of, I loved it to be able to give back to that. So a lot of the sports groups are certainly something that I've always been involved in. As my kids, play sports, got more involved. But I did get involved before my kids played, just to kind of give back and coach. Hockey's a big thing, and it brings a sense of community. So I think that's one thing that I have just fond memories. Tying things like the Strawberry Festival, which we would go and play baseball there and do that, and then the hockey and the sports organizations was something that really brought that sense of community back. My dad played for a team called the Air Mills Classics, which was a seniors men's league. I don't even think they were seniors back then, to be honest, because I think they were in their 40s, but maybe they called them seniors back then. But I have fond memories of that, which was all very local. Yeah. So all his teammates all lived in Air Mills, and remember going on tournaments and those types of things. And there's still a banner in Air Mills Twin Rinks called the Air Mills Classics, and it's on the back wall in Rink 2, I believe, that shows some of the some of the history. But there's a lot of different groups that were very much community based back then, and really brought people together. We say as we grow as a city, and it's not just us in Mississauga, but you start to lose, it almost feels like, some of that real sense of community, which is something that we always try to bring back, whether it's the street parties or the fun fairs or all of these things that I work with my ratepayer associations on, promoting that sense of community, because it's what makes us tick. It's what makes us a great city, and what makes us individually in wards great communities. So I don't know if that answered the question, but
no, absolutely. I do think there's a hat tip that needs to be had to all those ratepayer groups. I was growing up in Arundel Village. I was part of a ratepayers group as well, and just over the years, so many volunteers that come forward through that really help make a sense of place and a pride of place. And I think the ward councillor, the ward events that you have as a councillor, and all your council colleagues that do it, are also about really cementing that local connection to the place you immediately live in and the neighbors you have. And I think that's important as our city grows.
No, it's extremely important. And I mean, I've got some great ratepayer associations, and people ask me, all the time, whether it's colleagues, and we all have different groups, but I love working with the ratepayer associations because, again, as much as there's always challenges in certain areas, they're the voice that is out there. They're the ones that can come to me. I can't be in every nook and cranny of the ward all the time. But having that working relationship with the ratepayer associations is amazing, and we work very, very closely together. But, Oak Ridge, which is down Mississauga Road, so kind of south of Dundas, is one that's been established for quite some time. And the Oak Ridge community has been here longer than the city of Mississauga as well. And then, of course, you've got Sherwood Forest, which I tell people all the time. I remember riding bikes through, and the old Carmel Heights site there, and kind of again, riding through those neighborhoods on bikes. And Sir John Homestead's another one that's just a beautiful, tight knit community. But then there's others as well. Then we talk about Air Mills. It doesn't have an official ratepayer association, but very tight knit kind of group, growing up. And then the Sawmill Valleys and Pheasant Run, Arbor Green. These are all areas that, again, I've fond memories, and actually watching them grow. I mean, Sawmill Valley as an example, it's a very established community now, but I remember when, the original Sunkist Market was there, and my brother, I've told this story, my brother got his first job pushing grocery carts, in the parking lot when it was Sunkist Fruit Market back in the day. So a lot of changes have happened, and positive changes, have happened, but they're all, again, really great communities. And I know everybody across the city, the different wards, all have wonderful communities, and obviously strong connections to those communities because they're important to all of us. So
the 50th really is, it's remarking on change, but it's also celebrating continuity as well. It's kind of a neat element. But I've forgotten about the Sunkist. That was Sunkist. That was one of the places we shopped at when I was a kid.
Yeah, they had some great products in there from what I remember. But yeah, I know my brother had his he had his first job in there doing that. But when we've seen a lot of changes, and like I say, the evolution, and we're going to continue to see more. Like some of the areas like South Common Mall and Sheridan. I still call it Sheridan Mall, that used to have the blocks in the center, and my mom would
remember the blocks.
My mom would drop us off in the center, and she would go do shopping and come back an hour and a half later and hope that there wasn't a bloody nose or a black eye from us fighting each other on the blocks. But there's a photo of that somebody did send me, and again, I certainly do have great memories of of that, and even our downtown as it grows. In the office that I'm sitting in right now, I remember when this was open, and my dad was on council in '87, and we had some royalty come, and I know the whole story, and it was quite an event and quite a to-do to go from. I think that was really the start of me realizing how big the city's become, because when you went to the old city hall, it was small, and it was a little bit dark, and the council chambers were small, and again, not great memories, but I do have some. And then coming to this vast and massive building with the architecture that some people loved and some people hated, they as with any architecture. But seeing this city hall open, and I mean, I was young at the time, but it was quite eye-opening to see how big the city's getting and going to become. So they all connect us.
Was there a moment when you first got elected as councillor, coming in after your mom had retired? Do you pinch yourself a little bit to sit in that chair? And
you still do.
You still do.
Still do. It's 10 years, and it's I mean, my mom is amazing individual, as is my dad, and they did great work, public service, and that's kind of where I get it from. But I still get people that regularly, and I'm very happy about it. But they were always, oh, I know your dad, and he helped me with this back in this day, and oh, your mom helped me with this back in those days. So I look here and know that the work that that they did. Now, my dad wouldn't have necessarily been in this office. I think that had some changes back in the day, but there's still a part of me that just still considers this my mom's office. So, and it always will.
And there's something to be said for, and I don't know if this puts pressure on the next generation of your kids or whatever, but that family name resonates, I think, with solid service in Mississauga, and respected service. And I don't mean to be blowing smoke at it. I really do think the Mahoney name has become synonymous with council. So I just, congratulations to your family for those years of service, and really in part of that 50th anniversary story of the city.
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly do appreciate that. It's something that I'm very, very proud of. And again, growing up in it, and people used to say, back in the day, Mr. and Mississauga, that was what people would, call my parents. And yeah, I mean, it's but the actual, the care that they had in dealing with people is something that I try to emulate as best I possibly can. But it's so important that you just need to make that connection with people, and what we try to do is help. And I know that my mom and dad combined, the number of people that they've helped over the years, I mean, I'm not even scratching the surface, and certainly do try to live up to that name. And I never really felt the pressure of it. I think I just kind of felt proud. I think that it's something that it wasn't work for my parents. They just came to them naturally, to be able to do it. And I try to, take it in the same approach. I know it's, especially when I was first elected, it's big shoes to fill. And I was coming from a different life, which was, I enjoyed and, had some success at, but it really just brought me back, with this opportunity, and my wife and I having the conversation, and she just said, if you don't do this, you're going to regret it one day. So, the reason that I do this is the passion and respect and, pure amazement that I saw my parents go through over the years. But we're connected to this community and tied to the city. And when I say community, the ward, but tied to the greater city. And people ask me still to this day, will you ever see yourself moving out of Mississauga? And I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I ever could. I'm in no rush to do anything. But it warms my heart when people say such nice things. About my parents, and I do know that, and it's very, very rare, if ever, that anybody ever says anything negative. So pure passion for the city, and they have actually grown this. It's amazing, because if you think in 1978, I mean, if we talk about our 50 years, so going back to 74, my dad, started it, then my mom, and I'm blessed enough to be here now, but we've seen it from start, and you never know with my kids, growing up in this, you naturally get a passion for it. Like you say, the breakfast discussions, but we always used to joke that it's a Sunday dinner, because that was always the time, as busy as everybody was with, my parents obviously busy with their job, my brothers and I running in different areas for sports. It was a rule, and you didn't cross my mom when that rule was put into place, that everybody has to be home regardless for Sunday dinner. So we had a lot of interesting and fun. And I don't know, I mean, I want to say we've been through, I mean, you could count the elections, but over years, we've got to be pushing 30, elections between the three of us, between my dad municipally and provincially and federally, and and probably what 10 with, I can't even remember, but so yeah, we've been through a lot of election campaigns, and enjoyable, for the most part. Certainly can be stressful, but very, very fond memories of my brothers and I were the sign guys, of course. So we put up thousands and thousands and thousands of signs in our lifetime.
I don't imagine you missed that part too much.
No, my older brother was always the one who seemed to take the brunt of it, right? Because he was the oldest, so he was the leader when it came to, being the sign team, and I'm the middle child, so I kind of, snuck through a little bit. And but no, that could be stressful. You didn't want to get back to the campaign office and have all the chits of signs that aren't put up yet, and have my dad walk in and see that. So we worked pretty hard at it, but it actually brought us together, not only as a full family, but my brothers and I too, for sure, and my cousins and our friends who always helped out as well. So we look back on it with fond memories and probably some funny stories, but yeah, it could be stressful in the moment for sure. And you never, as many election campaigns, and touch wood, there's been some success. My parents obviously, their success in election campaigns, but you never take anything for granted, and that's what makes it a bit stressful, going through. And it's not about the job, it's about that you want to finish the work that you've started too, right? I mean, you put in all of these projects and all of the work that you're doing, and you just want to see everything through. So lots of fun. And I tell you, the one quick story about elections that we still talk about is back in the early days of the 70s, my dad used to rent a Winnebago. So
Okay.
you can just imagine us, as family and my brothers and again our friends and my dad driving this Winnebago with this loudspeaker thing that would come out and be vote for Steve Mahoney, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he wrote himself the song. I think my mom's mom might have written the song, but fond memories of, those are old school politicking, campaigning. We're driving through the neighborhoods with a loudspeaker and singing songs. So funny.
I must admit I hadn't heard that one before. So I'm just
Did it for a couple of elections. He did a couple of elections. I mean, I remember when you pull up with the Winnebago out front of the house and honk. And of course, we as young kids would love it because it's like our own little playground, in the back of this Winnebago with him. And I'm not gonna lie, the loudspeaker embarrassed us a little bit because we were perhaps a bit shy as kids, but my dad has never been shy.
So I think we've answered part of this question, but some of the people that to you have had the a positive impact on you and on the city of Mississauga, just kind of the giants whose shoulders we stand upon when we look at the evolution of the city. Are there a couple people that come to mind?
Well, I mean, I think we for sure have talked about my parents, and obviously that's number one with with that inspiration for me. But people like Margaret Marland, who I knew, and actually more recently we've reconnected because she lives in one of the seniors buildings in my ward, and people like Margaret, who really left roots here as a strong woman, a very successful politician, back in the day. Then I remember the Ted Southorns and from back in the day, and a lot of those folks, and of course Hazel, like they say, she obviously again elected with my dad in '78, the same time where my mom came in. I guess it was in '92, and they had a very good relationship. And I think Hazel really relied on my mom's steadiness, back in the day. And politics can be challenging. I like to tell people that politics, it's not personal, it's politics. But you're certainly gonna, you can imagine some of the backroom discussions that have happened between, and whether it be Hazel or my mom and dad or any of them for that matter, that are that are there. But I think those are kind of the obvious obvious one. And then of course, with my mom and when she was, I mean, Pat Sato was a big my seatmate for 2 terms, and a bit of a mentor on that side when I was first elected, here, and of course, the Pat Mullins and my apprentice and all of those councillors that I watched, we're kind of close. We're good friends with my mom, we'll say, and it wasn't just about politics. It was that friendship that that they had, and the Rhoda Begleys at the region and Gail Miles, at the region, who again were very good friends with my mom, and I kind of saw them from the friendship side. But then when I come into the job and you see, how much is involved in what they've done. So that's the region, and I know it's not Mississauga, but it's just that connection, there. And I didn't necessarily know staff as much, again, kind of growing up here, but I know that there were some pretty prominent, whether it's city managers with Doug Lychek or Dave O'Brien, who obviously left their mark over the years, on the city. But I think I was lucky in a lot of ways that a lot of these people that I just talked about, I got to know kind of as not as that politician in the thing, but just as friends of my parents. So whether it was over at, my parents had a regular Christmas Eve shindig, so to speak, where it was an open house, and seeing all of them in that light of just being, well, of course they are regular normal people, but it's I think there's a lot of people who have pulled from the same rope to build the great city we are, and that's just a small sampling of that.
I wonder how many decisions that impacted the city of Mississauga were made about around the Mahoney Christmas tree.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, to be honest with you, there still might be some that do happen, because as much as my parents, I shouldn't say the decisions, but the discussions, we don't, it's not like that's what we talk about all the time, but I certainly love the fact that, that I can go to them with an issue that's happening and just talk about it. And to be honest, I think they love the fact that they can come to me, or they have trust in me, but knowing, that I'll try my very best to make the right decisions and to think things through. But it's I'm absolutely blessed to have that sounding board if and when I need it, and I've needed it. I've needed it, especially in the early days. With some of the navigation, and so for me to be a phone call away, and I joke with some people. It's like I just had to call my mom quickly to ask her something, and then an hour and a half later we're still on the phone. So I do cherish that, and but it's I do think they enjoy it too. That they can still have that connection, because again, they dedicated their life to public service, and they dedicated their life to to the city of Mississauga. So I think they're happy that I'm here to be able to continue to talk about it and to continue to try to move that forward, and I will do my best to continue.
Yeah, no, just having that wisdom to draw on, that collective memory and of service, but of the city itself is remarkable to have, not only to you, but for the city itself. It's quite quite something.
But and it's funny when you think about this, because now we have these logos and for the 50th and everything else. And I was telling my colleagues at lunch the other week that I'm like, I remember when it was proud to be 10, and I still have some of those things, whether they're buttons or whatever, that are kind of kicking around. I think they have some at the Grange, actually. And
yes, we do. Yes. I was going to say, segue into the Grange, we got a hat tip to your family and your mom particularly. Heritage Mississauga would not be in this building without your mom. So
she was a big Heritage supporter and still is. And I don't know if that comes from her English roots, but she loved Heritage. I think it was one of the things I wouldn't speak for her and say she enjoyed most, but she certainly did love, she does love the history and the heritage. So that's great.
Yeah, and part of our chapter. So let's end on a question where we've been looking backwards here, and I will say that's my forte. But let's look forward. Let's go in the prognostication for a little bit. And if you had a wish for the next 50 years of the city, here we are reflecting on 50 years past, but 50 years forward, what would it be? Looking ahead.
I mean, are we talking about city building? Because I mean, that's where my headspace is, these days, and understanding the population that is coming in and the growth that is coming in, but to ensure that we are building the city to leave it for legacy, whether it's the 50 years or even the 50 years after. So connecting by transit and all of these things that happen, you kind of want to look forward. And hindsight's 2020. We could have probably done some things differently. But I think we have a real opportunity here to grow our city, and I have these visions of connecting. So I mean, we've got what we call villages of the Streetsville and Port Credit and Arundel and Erin Mills and all of the things you see in the council chambers, around, and having this connection, but connecting them with what we need in the future, and that is the higher order transit. That's getting people out of their cars. It's looking after our environment. I've chaired the environment committee for 10 years. It's something I'm very passionate about. I also sit on conservation, but making sure that we're having that thought process going forward on how we can leave a positive legacy for not only my kids, but my kids' seems scary to say, but and there's a lot of these things that I know that the council is committed to, and staff are certainly committed to. As we see this growth coming in, that we always have that lens on connection, how we can connect, whether it's through transit or cycling and building complete communities and those types of things, but also leaving a positive legacy on our environment. So through building codes and ensuring that we're following and being leaders in climate change and those types of things, I think is important. And I think it's an exciting time right now. I know it's pretty stressful for a lot of people with the build homes faster and these things that are coming forward, but I think there's an opportunity to be able to do this right. Not just build everywhere that you're going to build, but make sure that you're building to have those complete walkable communities that are connecting to transit. Now, it's always going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of vision, but most importantly, it's going to take the passion to believe that we're building an absolutely incredible city, building on what is already an incredible city. And I think we still have quite a bit of a footprint, or we can make a difference in some of these changes. So that's really what I'd like to see. It's our downtown's obviously going to grow over time, continue to grow with the number of buildings. And we just, need to build that complete. When I say community, I mean city. That everything is connected, everything's easy to go, and environmental issues are right up there at the top.
Well, I just, for me, looking ahead, I'm a resident here. I'm passionate about the city and the stories of the city. But knowing that there's somebody with, as deep roots as you have, as a longtime resident of the city, but passionate about the city, helping steer the ship, I just, thank you. And it does provide a sense of a belief in the future for the city. So with that, I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy as a ward councillor. I can imagine you're busier as deputy mayor. So it's I wish you the best, and just thank you so much for joining us here.
I appreciate that, and it's not all work, because you know that you're doing the right thing and you're trying your very best. So it's it's a passion that we have. But I appreciate you taking the time and all the work that you're putting into us celebrating our 50th, and it's been a great conversation.
Well, thank you so much. We'll talk to you later. Thank you for spending some time with us here at Ask a Historian. And thank you also to Ward 8 Councillor Matt Mahoney for sharing his moments and milestones with us for the City of Mississauga's 50th anniversary. Like, subscribe, and follow us, and stay up to date on all the heritage happenings. And we will see you on future episodes of Ask a Historian with Heritage Mississauga.